It's 3 o'clock on the dot. Thank you all for your patience. We have more people filing into the virtual room, but we'll go ahead and get started with today's web event. Before we go into our complete web event, a couple of things. One, I'm going to share with you all several files that you can download. And so if you can go to the file transfer item that just pops up on your screen, and you'll see that I'm placing into there several items that you all can download. These items are all associated with today's web event. So go ahead and go there. You can get access to each of those items that I'm now putting inside of the file transfer option that you have there. So what you'll simply do is just click on the name of the file and then download it. It should download directly for you there. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm going to share with everyone a multimedia file that you will see. On that file, it will allow for you to see or view the closed captioning for today's web event. So what you'll do is look at the multimedia file there, and on that file you will see the live captioning related to today's web event. That will come up at the very bottom right-hand side of your screen there. So you all will see that captioning shortly here. And it will pop up in a little bit there where it will, let me make sure I put in the correct link here for everyone just to double check. Here we go. So everyone will see that closed captioning in that multimedia there. Let's see, make sure I'm putting it right. Yep, there we go. And you all should see the live captions coming up on your screen shortly there. All right. Oh, wait, let me try that one more time. Make sure that we have the captioner on. There we go. Okay, you all will see the live captioning coming up shortly there. And then finally, a quick poll question, and we have more folks file into the virtual room here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a quick poll for everyone. And basically on this poll, what we would like to know from folks is if you can identify what your current knowledge is on this subject matter. So you'll see a poll pop up into your control panel there. Just simply let us know, how do you rate your current knowledge? So I'll leave that poll question up for a moment while I go through my housekeeping slides here. And then I'll read off the poll results there shortly once we complete that. So again, welcome to everyone, and thank you all for joining today's final webinar in our series, Wellness Program and Implementation Series Part 6, Components of a Wellness Program Success Assessment. My name is William Moore with OJJDP's NTTAC, and before we get started, just have a few housekeeping items to keep in mind for today's web event. Please note that we are recording today's webinar. The recording will be archived on OJJDP's multimedia page, so take a moment to view that page where you can see additional webinars on juvenile justice and child victimization prevention related topics. If you would like any supporting materials, please contact the OJJDP Help Desk. If you have trouble downloading the event materials that I've placed there in the web event file, please contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk, and we would be more than happy to help you access any of those items. Also note that in the chat, you all will see a Google link that my co-host will put, where it will also give you access to the webinar materials as well if you're having trouble downloading or accessing those items in the file transfer pod. For optimal audio, we ask that you dial out through the WebEx system, or excuse me, have the WebEx system dialed to your phone line. When you're connected, you'll see a phone icon that will appear next to your name. If you have any technical experiences during today's web event, please be sure to send me a private chat message and I will help you troubleshoot. Now, during today's web event, we will have a Q&A session. During the Q&A session, we ask for you to please type your questions to our presenters in the chat box. However, before you hit send, please make sure you select everyone or all panelists before you send your questions. My co-host has put that direction there inside of the chat as well. So before you send your question, please be sure to select everyone or all panelists before hitting submit or send. Help us count. If you're viewing the webinar today by yourself, there's no need to type anything at this time. However, if you're viewing in a group, please go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you're viewing alone, there's no need to type anything at this time. Please make sure you send your message again to all panelists or everyone to assure that we've received your message. Within 24 hours, you will receive an automated email from OJJDP's NTTAC with the certificate of attendance. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. This is the agenda for today's web event. And I will now turn it over to Gabby for today's presentation. And Anthony, just a heads up, you do indeed have control of the presentation now, and you can move the slides for Gabby there as well. Gabby, feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Will. Hi, everyone. As Will said, my name is Gabriella McGowan, and I am the Program Manager for the Innocent Justice Foundation. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are extremely excited to conclude this series, not because we don't want to keep talking on the subject, but because it's been a journey, and we are so hopeful that you got a lot of beneficial information and that you were here with us. It's such a treat to have you here for 6 parts of this amazing series. For those of you who have not seen parts 1 through 5, we do have them recorded, and they are available on NTTAC's website as well as our own at shiftwellness.org. So feel free to go through there and check out the rest of the series. We cover things like chaplaincy and peer support, embedded mental health providers, as well as just some tips and tricks of wellness that you can implement in the office if you don't have any specific program for yourself and you don't have the budget for a full program. So hopefully those were all good. Just as a disclaimer again, that this wellness series was created for Icac, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and their affiliated agencies, but we can take this information and we can apply it to any agency, any organization that you are a part of. So hopefully that was helpful to you. We are planning to create a guide that will have the information that we provided to you in the 6 webinars in a written format. Working on that very hard right now, and it will be available again on our website, and you can also contact us and see if it is concluded, and we'll send it over to you so that you have it in written form as well. So I will not take much time because I know you've heard me say this just about a million times before. Again, thank you so much for everyone for being here with us today. We have our absolutely amazing trainers, Carol Brusca and Anthony Mace. Oops, I forgot to say that we are actually funded by OJJDP, the Office of Juvenile Justice Prevention Programs, and that is how we can provide these trainings for you, for a broad audience, free of charge. And again, I will hand it over to Anthony now. Anthony, take it away.
Thank you, Gabby. Welcome, everyone. I'm sure many of you have got a chance to attend the first 5, right? So we're at number 6. Pretty exciting. I'm actually kind of sad to see the series go because I've had a great time presenting this with my co-presenter, Carol Brusca, also who's part of our Icac team. Those of you that this is your first time, just a little bit about me. I am the commander and the special agent in charge with the Office of the New Mexico Attorney General. I oversee Internet Crimes Against Children, Icac, and the Human Trafficking Task Force. So I oversee 2 task forces in our state. I've been in law enforcement for over 33 years. I actually retired from the Albuquerque Police Department. It's been going close to 13 years. So I put in 20 years there. Yes, and if you watch Breaking Bad, it's very similar to that in some areas. Working narcotics for a number of years, got a chance to experience some of that. What are some of the things that I've shared with you folks that over the years that I've learned a lot in law enforcement. I've learned how important it is to talk about what's going on in your life, both professional and personal, especially working in the criminal justice field. I found that over the years that we're not very open. So, and I saw this directly with some of the teams that I supervise. When I was with APD, I was in homicide and sex crimes and child abuse. A lot of those units dealing with people and of course dealing with the worst times of their lives, families and of course the victims, and dealing with that. But it affected many of the folks that I worked with directly. And so what I found back then is that just taking it home and having a drink or doing things just to kind of make that day go away wasn't enough. And which is why I got interested in starting a wellness program for our teams. And again, I'm excited to share this with you because when I started developing the Icac task force and the human trafficking task force a little later, immediately I said, I'm going to do things a lot different because I have that control that I can do that now and make some real changes to make a difference, which is the reason we're able to create the wellness program we have in our state, and which is the reason I was able to bring Carol on. So again, this is the end of our last part of our series. We're going to have a lot of great information to share with you today, but even after today, if Carol and I can assist you with anything, we're always available. I'm always happy to talk about some of the mistakes I made along the way and some of the great successes that we've seen and we continue to see. So I'll turn it over to my co-presenter, Carol.
Hi, my name is Carol Brusca. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am the embedded mental health provider for Anthony's human trafficking and his Icac task force. I've been with them, I think, maybe 6 years, Anthony, something 6 or 7, something like that, but for quite a while. So, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. I've had the opportunity to meet some wonderful people to help people process through things. And I think between Anthony and myself, we've been able to make a positive change with the task force and let them know that seeking out support and wellness is the thing to do. It's not something you should be ashamed of. It's something that you should look forward to because that's what's going to help you keep doing the work. So, like I said, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been doing that work for many, many years. I also have a degree in international relations with an emphasis in terrorism. So in that time, I was able to actually learn a lot about human trafficking, which helps me understand the human trafficking side of Anthony's task force. I also do some work with some people with severe mental illness who are experiencing homelessness. And one of my very favorite things to do is talk about wellness. I like to give wellness tips as much as I can, whether it's in the grocery store, whether it's with clients I'm working with, whether it's my staff. If I figure there's one thing that I can do to help somebody, I will try to pass that along. I want to make sure that people have what they need. And if I can give them some information that will help make their life easier or make their day easier, then I want to do that. I'm really excited that we're here today and that we get to present this last the last of the series. It is kind of bittersweet because we've really enjoyed this process, and Anthony and I, along with Gabby, have enjoyed being able to spend time together talking about this with you. Hopefully, many of you have been able to be here throughout the whole process to see it unfold, and now you have some good ideas how you can build your own wellness program. But without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get started, and thank you so much for joining us today. So these are the objectives that were for the whole series. These were things that we covered up through the whole series. So it's not going to be just what we did today. So one of the things that we did in the very beginning is to understand why wellness programs are vital. And they are vital for Icac teams, but they're also vital for whatever team you're working on where you're being exposed to other people's trauma. And whether that's working for a CAC, whether that's working probation and parole, whether that's working in at a therapy office, whatever the case may be, if you're exposed to other people's trauma, then it's wonderful to have a wellness program that is related to the type of work we were explaining. Identify how to assess Icac teams. So that was something that we also talked about. How can you figure out what your specific team needs, and how can you figure out what to do to create that team? And then talking about the components of a program, and that could be the components as far as whether you want to use chaplaincy or whether you want to use an embedded MHP. But again, that's going to be on one of our the previous presentations. We're going to explore implementation challenges and learn how to assess ongoing satisfaction. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about that. How can you find out if the program that you have is useful, if it's helping the individuals that you're wanting to help, and if it's not, what are the things that you can do? So let's go ahead and jump right in, Anthony. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Carol. So again, like I've done throughout the series, let's talk a little bit about stigma. And, you know, I wanted to touch on this again. I know I've said this every time, but I definitely have some concerns and I get all the law enforcement publications that there are. I mean, throughout the years, I've proven subscribed to everything. And what I have noticed, of course, is there's been a high turnover of law enforcement individuals leaving law enforcement field because not feeling they're getting support from the public, not feeling they're getting the support from their department, numerous reasons. And I see that over and over again. Unfortunately, we've seen I see an average of about 2 to 3 law enforcement deaths a day through the publications. Many of them are in the hands of a suspect that they're taken into custody. But what I've seen an increase in is that an increase in suicides. So I was thinking about this last week, is that why are we seeing an increase in suicide among law enforcement? And it's for all those reasons that I mentioned. So I did some research through various organizations, IACP, you're familiar with them, Rudimer Family Foundation, a lot of different organizations, and they were showing that suicide is on an increase among law enforcement because they're just not sure where to turn to, who to depend on, who to talk to. One of the figures that was really alarming to me is that just in 2019, we had 228 suicides in our country. That's a lot. By far, it was more than officer-involved violence where their lives are taken by a perpetrator. So I think this is important. This is an important series. I think it's important that we all do something to take care of our people. And you may not be in law enforcement. You may be in the criminal justice field and you're a forensic examiner, or you're a forensic interviewer, or you're a victim advocate and you're sitting through this series and you're hoping to learn something wellness. It applies to you too. There isn't a stigma anymore not to ask for help. Just keep that in mind. It's okay to ask for help. There's no reason to keep it inside. There's plenty of places to go now to ask for help. I found at least 10 websites just before we met today, just to see what's out there. I check every day, and there's a lot of help out there for all of us. Of course, we're gonna help you here, and we're gonna present some things that you can take back with you for your teams. And of course, the Innocent Justice Foundation is always there for you. But just there's no stigma by asking for help anymore. You know, I know that years ago we used to go just drink it off or do other things that just try to make that go away, and there's no reason to do that. Okay, and I came from that generation. 33 years of being a cop, I remember going to choir practice. And now I wouldn't think about that at all. I mean, if I'm going to have a drink, it'll be for a social reason, not to forget. So again, no stigma. Let's ask for help, and let's take care of each other. So let's go on and move forward.
Okay, so first we want to address the importance of assessment. So why do we do assessment? We do it for multiple reasons, and we're going to go over several of those right now, but it helps to promote organizational effectiveness. So how does assessment relate to organizational effectiveness? We need to understand whether our program is being effective in order to then have the organization be effective. So if as the embedded MHP for Anthony's task force, if I am there as the MHP, but I'm not helping them out, then it's not going to be very useful in making their whole team more effective. So if I'm there and I'm causing more damage, or I'm making people feel bad about asking for help, or if I'm unavailable to them, then it's going to be using the exact opposite of what we're hoping for. So when we do have a program that's working, then the organizational effectiveness will increase because people are getting their psychological needs met, and the stress is not the biggest thing that is impacting their day. And it's going to promote wellness program effectiveness. So with respect to that, if we understand how to assess the program, then we can understand if this specific program is effective. So for our task force, I'm the MHP. We do, pre-COVID, we had some chaplaincy, a partial chaplaincy program as well, but we don't necessarily have a formal peer support. So by doing an assessment, we could learn whether or not we would need to have a change in the work that I'm doing, whether it would be effective if we brought on peer support, whether we need to make sure we've got chaplaincy back on board. So doing this assessment is a way to ask the individuals who we're supporting, what do you need, how do you need it, and what can we do to make you benefit the best from this program. And it also discovers possible gaps in the program. So there might be something where maybe it's not enough for me to meet with people once a month, or maybe maybe the gap is that we need to bring in more family support, or maybe what we need is more team building activities. Again, this assessment is going to help us notice those gaps, because people will have the opportunity anonymously to say, this is what's working and this is what's not, and then allowing us the opportunity to fill that gap. And obviously, we're trying to constantly assess so we can figure out what we need to do to make this the best program we can. We would love it if we had a lot more money and we could do a lot more activities and support people in the way that they would all really like to be supported, but we know that that's not realistic. So given the budget that we have, how do we use the tools that we have with the task force to give them the best that they can given the circumstances? And another, reason for assessment, it's improved programs and services. So when we're looking at assessment, again, it's how can I make my program that I have created with the support of Anthony, how can I make it better? Do I need to do more one-on-one? Do I need to send out more emails? Do I need to send out less emails? What is it that needs to be changed? And then the services I'm giving. Maybe people would prefer that I would meet with the individual and their spouse, because currently I don't do that, but maybe that's something that they would like to see happen. So it's just really having feedback and making sure that everyone giving the feedback feels comfortable that what they say will not be held against them later. And that's really key. When we're doing this type of assessment, we need to feel that we can speak freely, because otherwise the assessment is not going to be of value. So Anthony and I try to do our best to really make people feel that they can say what they need to say, and in the way they need to say it, and there will be no retribution if they say, I hate this program, or Carol's the worst mental health provider I've ever seen. We want to do what we can to make their lives better. So if the whole team felt like I wasn't giving them what they needed and I couldn't give them what I needed because they needed a different person, then that would certainly be something that Anthony would look at. Also, it's going to facilitate program growth and development, and how that works, again, is we're going to find out what people think about it, and if we can say, where would you like to see us grow? Would you like us to, we're meeting with all of the individuals in the task force, and Anthony and I really did this. So initially it was just the task force, and then we expanded to the affiliates. So that's how our program has grown, because now it's just not the task force members, it's the affiliates as well, and then developing that so that there can be more of a bond. And what we do is, when I'm talking with the individuals at our quarterly meeting, I encourage them to communicate with each other. So even though they're spread across the state, then I can encourage them, now that they've met each other and now that they know that there is no stigma in asking for support, they know they can reach out and ask for help from any of the other task force or affiliate members. And then, you know, another thing that's useful about the assessment is to discover what the main concerns are. So I can come in and I can think that I know what their concerns are. My thought, you know, my initial thought before I started was their biggest concern is going to be about the traumatic material they're seeing and how that's going to impact them. Well, what I discovered through my own just conversation and assessment with them is that they went into the work expecting that they were going to see really horrific things. So that wasn't the thing necessarily that that made them the most surprised. I think it was trying to figure out how to get along with coworkers. So it was just like any other job that you would have in any other area. One of the main concerns was, how do I get along with my coworker? How do I manage this, my work life versus my home life? And so all of those things came out because of assessment. And otherwise, I would be trying to support people in a way that wasn't requested and wasn't necessarily as needed, because I wasn't having an understanding of what they really wanted.
You know, it's interesting, Carol, what we learned through this process is that that with, I mean, even with doing the exit interviews, and there's an issue that I've had over the last 3 months, and I don't know if it had anything, I really don't think it has anything to do with COVID, because we were been locked down since March, and then we've all been working virtual here in our state, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, I know people love to socialize and be in the office, but during this time, I've actually 3 of my agents have moved over went to other departments because, and just so everyone, we have a longer retirement within the state agency, where if they went to a county, they could knock 5 years off. So what I learned, and I was thinking about that as part of the assessment process, and so I got a chance to talk to each individual agent before they left, you know, as part of their exit interviews. I met with them, you know, to have their turn in their gun and badge and all the equipment that they had. And just as I talked to them, I said, so tell me, you know, being here, what are some things that I can learn from you that I can share with future agents are going to take your position? And they go, well, of course, the concern is the retirement. You know, that's, everybody wants to retire sooner, so I understand that. But one of the things they said, no, we love the work environment. It felt very comfortable. We knew we got the support from you, and we knew we had Carol was always there for us, and the people around us were very supportive. The team and everyone kind of knew they could count on each other, because that stigma of law enforcement where we just keep to ourselves and we're afraid to say something, and we're afraid they're going to say it's too, you know, we can't handle it or something. But they said the difficult thing is in the interview for the positions, and each person that I had brought in that they were leaving came from, one was she worked sex crimes, adult sex crimes, cold case at the police department that I retired from. And she's also a therapist too, and law enforcement, and she's law enforcement. And she told me the most difficult thing for her is that she didn't realize how difficult this CSAM was, child sexual abuse material, right? And being exposed to that, she's like, I just didn't realize. She goes, I've worked adult crimes and I've worked these for a number of years, and it really isn't that I'm exposed to. And she goes, you told me that during the interview, and I knew that, and I knew this is what I really wanted to do, but once I was in there. And I said, but she said, you're doing everything right, everything that needs to be done to take care of us. It's just that understanding why and how that's affecting me. And she said that she left for a good reason, again, because of the 5-year, but she goes, that was one thing that she learned. And so I've learned that, and I implemented that. I started doing the interviews again, and that's part of the interview. In fact, the job description that I send out now, even for human trafficking, I'll let them know that you may be looking at CSAM, right? and that some of the things that you look at are going to be difficult, and they know that in the job description when they apply. And of course, people are going to apply because it's a great position to be in, but not understanding what they're going into. And then during the interview process, I asked them, what is vicarious trauma? What does compassion fatigue mean to you? And they go, well, most of the time they're going to get it wrong. It's okay. But I want them, because they're not thinking about themselves. They're thinking about something completely different, dealing with a victim. And I said, no, about you. What do you do to take care of yourself? And then this is what you're going to be experiencing. This is what you're going to be exposed to. And it's going to be frequent. And I want you to think about that. But I think that is part of the assessment process, is that we understand and we continue to help our program grow. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in today's presentation, is that you learn from others that are leaving, you learn from others that are there, and then you continue to have the program grow, develop other things, and you see what works best. I mean, prior to the pandemic, we did a lot of in-person stuff, and Carol and I would do trainings, and we're definitely a lot more meeting with people online, but we adapted. Carol adapted. I mean, she immediately came up with ways to still be part of their lives. So it's all part of that implementation of the program and watching it grow, and always being willing to change things as things start to progress and in different directions. Again, you can learn from your folks as they leave. So that being said, we look at how to evaluate, right? So so many of the programs, we look at them as a team-dependent program. So I know Carol touched on peer support and having that type of program in place. And that, I'm not knocking that program. It's a good program, and I saw that at APD. However, what I have found, having a professional like Carol, having an MHP, was better for my team, because when they ask those difficult questions, because I am great at talking to people and listening, but sometimes there's just some things that Carol can answer that I may not think about. But think about that, though, is when you're evaluating how the team dependent and how they dependent on the program. Do they work together as a team? We found initially that there was some resistance with doing the individual type of one-on-one with Carol and talking about it, because it was just a distrust thing, right? It was always, is this fit for duty, or do I say something wrong and then they're going to assess me, and am I going to be out of this job? And I worked so hard to be here. And so initially we looked at it as a team approach, and it was very successful that way. And evaluating it as a team approach was helpful too, because, and then other folks on the team, they started to learn that each one of them are experiencing very similar things that are going on, that how the images are affecting them, or working directly with the victims, how that's affecting them. Frequent assessments, again, I talked a little bit about the new programs. Always be willing to change, okay? When you evaluate your program and how it's working, because honestly, it's not going to stay the same. It isn't. I mean, if Carol and I kept it the same from 6 years ago, and we just said, okay, you call Carol if you need her, and we'll all get together about every 3 months, and then she's here for you, it's going to die, okay? She's always thinking, for a while there, she did Wellness Wednesdays, and which was very time-consuming and labor-intensive for her, because she was always trying to find something you needed to talk about on a Wednesday. And but that was great. That was a new part of the program, right? It was something that people, and I had a lot of my folks, and they wouldn't tell her directly, but they would say, I really look forward to those Wellness Wednesdays. I really look forward to the advice she's going to give. And so new programs, right? Something new you can do. I've got some great ideas, because I know we're all going to go back to the office within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And I've got some great ideas to get things off the ground, because I've learned a lot from my folks during this virtual environment. So think about how new programs and how they can change. And again, learning from the folks that are leaving your teams, and then allowing that time for those changes. Okay, and it's okay to change. You're always, I mean, especially with this current environment, and we all know that working in Icac, right? Technology changes every 6-7 minutes, so we have to be able to evolve with that as well, and that's all part of the evaluation. And then the annual and semi-annual evaluations are important. Because you look back and say, well, how are things working for this team? How are things, and when I say team, I mean, for us, it's the entire task force. Carol works with my entire task force. So we are now at about 156 members and about 89 affiliate agencies. So that's a lot of folks, right? Now, of course, not every single one of them calls her, but the folks know, and I would say at least someone from one of the teams somewhere in the state. It isn't just in our immediate team, so they know that. But we learn a little bit from doing these types of evaluations on what works best and how we can reach some of the areas throughout the state that we may not hear from as often through those evaluations. And then again, establishing better programs that maybe meet their needs better. And I forget this one, I have to use my mouse, so there we go. Some of the assessment process, of course, we definitely want to monitor and ongoing monitoring and tracking exactly what's taking place. As a commander, I mean, monitoring is like, I mean, I get an invoice from Carol, right? And we've talked about this, and it has a number. And the number is assigned to an individual, and I have no idea who that person is. So everything is done in a way where they remain anonymous. So that is the kind of tracking I'm talking about. I'm talking about the tracking on, you know, your people, you know how they're doing. And even if you're talking about folks that are not immediately under your complete control, where, I mean, they're not in your office, but they're like one of your affiliates, or there's someone in another agency. Ongoing tracking, checking in with them, those kind of things are important. Activities outlined have been completed. What do you think about that, Carol? What comes to mind?
Well, that would be something, Anthony, like if you and I had decided that I was going to be meeting with everyone quarterly, then you could sit down with me. You know, you and I would be doing our monitoring by saying, so have you met with everybody quarterly? Because Anthony can't really tell who I've met with since I do my bills and anonymously. So he doesn't know who I've met with, but we could have activities about that. Or we could, a conversation about that. We could also say when we met before the new year started, we said we would have 4 family meetings. It looks like we actually had 5 this year, so we got that covered. So it's a matter of looking at the activities that you want to have your mental health provider provide, and then following up to make sure those are being done. And then making sure that you've got some time frames, because if Anthony and I decided on 4 trainings for families, it would probably be best to have those throughout the year as opposed to trying to cram them all in at the end. So sitting down with your mental health provider and coming up with a plan on what you have decided as the commander or the manager of the agency decided is the important pieces you want to cover, and that's going to come from the assessments that you've done and the evaluations that you've done with your staff. Then you bring forth the information and say, okay, I did a survey with the staff, and they said they would like to have X, Y, and Z. And so we've got to make sure we can fit those activities into our plan for the year. How do we go about doing that? And then the monitoring goes through by Anthony and I meeting and discussing those. And again, the time frames are good so that we can make sure that people are getting what they need when they need it. It's just not all crammed in together. And then evaluation is going to be looking at the effectiveness. So if Anthony and I decided that what I was going to do was meet 4 times a year with families, and we looked at the results at the end of the year, and we realized that we had 4 events, and out of those 4 events, we only had 5 families show up. Then we need to kind of look at how effective was that. Maybe that even though it was only 5 families, that was really effective and it moved people in a forward direction. But maybe it wasn't so effective, and we need to look at a different way of passing out that information. So maybe we need to look at a family day where everybody comes together, or maybe we need to look at just emailing information out, or what do we need to do? So we evaluate that to see how the program is working. And then we want to make sure we're being transparent. So Anthony and I will know the results of the assessment, but we also want to make sure that the rest of the team knows, because they're the one giving us the input. So it wouldn't be right if we got information back from the team and they all said that we want 5 family meetings a year, and Anthony and I decided, we said, well, we're only going to do 2 because that's what you wanted, when in actuality it was 5. So we want to show the results of our assessments so that everyone will be able to have input the next time around, and they can look at what we're doing and how effective they feel it is and what would make the program even better.
Thank you, Carol. And, you know, something I was thinking about what Carol was how she was breaking that down is that this is very common, and I've seen this common throughout the last 33 years in law enforcement, is that many times we wait almost to the very end, towards the end of the year, to get a lot of our requirements in as far as training and those kind of things get done. And that was something, in fact, we were joking about that last week, is that usually November, December, everybody's trying to cram conferences and training and those kind of things in to get them done before the end of the year. And sometimes it's before the end of the fiscal year. But thinking about the assessment process, it's a lot different. This is something we want to do over a year. We're looking at a semi-annual and then an annual part of the year, but it isn't something we want to wait on. You know, it isn't something like we just need to get this training in and we just need to, you know, dot our I's and cross our T's, because this is a lot different. So again, having an effective program in place and then evaluating it, and then of course, as Carol mentioned, being transparent during that and sharing the results, and see how that's going to work for everyone. So like in our case, we have an entire 2 task forces, and we try to stay transparent, and I share that all the time with, for example, with one of my other larger groups in the northern or southern part of the state. I'll say, well, this is something we've learned in Albuquerque or in the metro area. Would you like to apply that here? So being transparent is an important part of that process.
So then we want to look at how are we going to measure? What are we going to decide is the criteria that we're going to use to measure the effectiveness of the program and the gaps in what we need to do. So we're going to look at the appropriateness of the services. So if, for instance, am I doing the things that are appropriate for what the staff needs? So again, if they're telling me that they're struggling with getting along with coworkers, then maybe I need to throw in some exercises or some conversations or some emails or some handouts related to getting along with teammates, or how you manage stress in the office. If I was doing something like trying to, with respect to appropriate for services, if I was doing something like that was not appropriate or that didn't fit, that didn't match with what they were asking. So if people were saying that they were really bothered by the materials they were looking at, and all I wanted to focus on was communication with their spouses, that really wouldn't be an appropriate service for what they're asking. So it's making sure that what you're giving is what they're asking for and that it's a good fit. And then accessibility of services. So that's been rather difficult since we had COVID. I've tried to make myself as absolutely as accessible as possible through meeting with the team on Zooms, or meeting with people individually on Zoom, or on the phone, texting, emailing. Recently, I was able to meet with a couple people in person, a couple people out one at a time in person. But how accessible is it? When we are when it's not during COVID, there's actually an office upstairs from Anthony's office where we can go and they can meet with you right then. So really, the service couldn't be much more accessible than it is. They have to just leave the office, get on the elevator, go up, a couple flights, and then I'm right there. So it would be much more difficult for if they had to go to a different city or if they had to go for a long period of time. So I'm very, very accessible to our actual task force. Now, I'm less accessible to the rest of the whole entire state because obviously I'm only in one location, but I try to make myself as accessible to them as possible as well by when we have the opportunity, I can go out to their location and meet with several different offices in that area. Again, trying to make my services as accessible as possible. And the acceptability of my services. So it's a fine dance, it's a fine line between figuring out what people want and what I can offer. So not necessarily is the therapy that I use with, or the types of therapy or the techniques I use would be the same for the Icac task force and the human trafficking task force as it might be for working with a child or working with a couple. So I have to figure out if the services I'm offering, of the program I'm offering, if how I'm presenting my materials, is it accessible to the law enforcement members and the task force members that I'm working with. And then the competence of the program professionals. So you need to make sure that obviously you have somebody who's competent. If Anthony was looking for a new mental health provider and brought somebody in that had no experience working with law enforcement or no experience working with trauma, then that might not be a person that was very competent in the areas he needed. Now, it doesn't mean that they might not be a competent professional, but just not a person who's got competency in the specific area where we need it. So it's a matter of making sure that they're a good fit, that they have what you need, that they can offer services that are useful, that those services are acceptable to the people needing the services, and that the person knows what they're doing.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I know, and I've mentioned this in a couple of the presentations, is that when I first started the program, and again, we're guessing Carol's been with me now at least 6 years, maybe longer. And again, I started developing the task force 13 years ago. Initially, when I learned about, I met folks from Innocent Justice and then started talking about the SHIFT program and what that's going to look like, and then working with commanders, and then started developing the program. It sounded great. I mean, it sounds like something. So then when I started implementing it in our state, I looked for the mental health professional provider, the person that was going to work perfect for our team. And I said, well, where do I start? You know, I've learned all these great tools, and I've talked to other commanders around the country and what that looks like. We've worked with therapists, again, through the Innocent Justice Foundation. But what does that look like in our state? So the first person I went to was, I found, well, by the way, common sense. Okay, so there's a therapist that works for our Department of Public Safety, and she would be a good fit because she's already worked with law enforcement. She knows law enforcement, and that's what I was thinking. Not the best way to think, though, because then when I reached out to her and I brought her on board for a short time, immediately people would say, well, why would we call her? You know, she does the assessment and fit for duty, and she is a person, if an officer has an issue or something, they go to her, and she makes a determination if they should stay in law enforcement. I mean, it's somebody that no one really wants. I mean, she definitely had a need and a purpose within this law enforcement agency, but it wasn't the purpose. It wasn't for the reason that what I needed her on my team. You know, someone that would understand what we're looking for, and not like a fitness for duty thing, because I mentioned before, I had one of my federal members mention to her chain of command that she was having some issues and that she just needed some help. And she needing help, meaning support on additional agents, and they took it to be that they needed to move her out of there altogether, and it's not what she wanted. And that's, everyone heard about that, right, on the team. So meaning like, well, you know, why would we talk to anyone, Anthony? I mean, that's not going to work for us. And then the second person I brought in, again, before Carol, he was somebody I worked with at the university, and he had a PhD, and I thought, wow. And then he's a critical incident team and did a lot of the training for law enforcement, one of the guys, and really down to earth, and got along with him great. But again, he was one of the guys in this case. everybody knew him, and some of them felt comfortable talking to him, but he was a little harder to reach. Nothing against him. He's a very busy person because he was doing a lot of different projects with the police department, not just wanting to be part of our team. And when they try to reach him and reach out to him, he wasn't able to do trainings and do a lot of different things that they really needed. So when I met Carol, and I mentioned this over and over again, I met her at the university, that immediately just seeing the way she worked with her students and the kind of person she is and her background, then I told my team about it. I go, how about this person? And they said, well, let us talk to her, give her a shot. So they got a chance to sit and talk to her, and the most grumpiest person on my team, and been with me forever, loves her. He was sold, and he was like, he would always be resistant to talk to anyone. And every single call and everything she does, he's the first person there. So having your team, having them buy in, I've learned that through some of the mistakes I made, and then helping you assess the right person, the competent person for the program, the person that really wants to know what they're doing, not just rely on, law enforcement is law enforcement. They all respond to homicide, robbery, or domestic violence. A lot different than the types of crimes we all deal with, the CSAM and everything else that comes along with that. And having the right person in there is very important.
So we also want to look at, as another measurement criteria, we want to look at the effectiveness of the program professionals. So previously I talked about the competence, but also the effectiveness is important. So given that my contract is very limited, I have to be kind of down and dirty with the information I give. So I want to make sure that I'm not, I already have rapport with everybody that I'm working with because I've met with them several times. So if they want to come in and see me individually, it's more a matter of what can I do for you right now? We've got about 3 sessions before we can move forward. So I have to be effective. If I was telling Anthony I need to meet with each of his staff members for 6 months, that would not be effective. I need to be able to give them something that they can start using right away, that can help them, that can move them forward. And then the efficiency of it. So how quickly am I able to get to somebody? Does it take me 6 weeks? If somebody says I need to talk, can I efficiently get there quickly in a meaningful way? Do I have to have them wait for a long period of time? If someone is in crisis, telling them to be on hold for 3 or 4 weeks is not the best way to do that. And then safety and confidentiality. So we want to make sure that I am doing what I need to do to keep information safe and confidential, but that also that the staff knows what confidentiality limits there are. So that would be, if someone is dangerous to themselves or others, I'm required by my licensure to report. So am I doing things in a safe and confidential way? And then am I following up with the team? Do I just say, hi, nice to see you, I'll see you next year? Or am I doing some sort of reaching out to them across the year to check in? With our team, when we're not in COVID status, I typically try to stop by every month or every other month just to check in. I don't want to be a pest, so it's knowing knowing that boundary and knowing the balance that works. There might be some teams where they prefer their mental health provider to stop by every week. Some might not want them to come by except every 6 months. So you have to know your team well enough to know what will work for them. But the follow-up is important so people don't feel like you kind of left them hanging. So all of these pieces are very important as part of the measurement criteria.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that everything she does, she is anonymous, of course, unless somebody tell me, one of my team members tells me, yeah, I talked to Carol today or something, but I'm never going to know. I mean, that's just not, I want them to feel comfortable with that. But what I have noticed with Carol, she has that approach with the team where she's on their face all the time, because many times they just don't want that. I mean, it's still a process for law enforcement to ask for help. And the last thing they need is someone coming in immediately saying that, at least with my teams. I mean, but they do appreciate her checking in. And for example, I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, it was bad timing. We had a lot going on. and she was trying to schedule a Zoom on a Friday. Like she was during the pandemic, she was trying to do that almost, if it wasn't every week, it was every other week, but she was always trying to get that in so people got a chance to see each other's faces and she could listen to them, and then give them some of the great tools that she has in her toolbox. But she was doing that recently. I mean, they were like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. She's like, well, she was working with them, and they all picked that up, that she was there for them, and she was trying to accommodate, and she wasn't saying, well, it has to be Friday at 9 o'clock on the 11th, and if you can't make it, too bad. She was still checking in, and they know that. And that's what the kind of team we want, and they know that they could call her, and they know it's she's available 24/7. Hopefully they're not calling her at 3 in the morning, but she's never said that to me, which I would never know if they did or not. But they know they can call. And I know many folks have called because I see the invoices when they come in. I know people are seeing her still. I just don't know when. And I would have never known. I mean, and of course, not knowing unless they tell me who's doing it. So again, having that kind of measurement criteria in place is important.
So what can we do to use as a self-assessment? Meaning, what can we give the staff members that they can do on their own? The one that I really love is the ProQual, and this is the Professional Quality of Life Scale. I think we have that attached. Gabby was going to have that attached. So please look for that. My suggestion is, no matter what your field is, use this every 6 months minimally. It just is a great way to figure out where you are with respect to your work. Are you feeling like you're doing really well? Are you feeling like you're experiencing some vicarious trauma, maybe some burnout, some compassion fatigue? But this is a really great way to look at your engagement at work, and if it feels like you're drowning because of your work, or you're feeling like you're doing a great job and you're moving forwards. And then SurveyMonkey, that's, SurveyMonkey, you can use the free version. I believe there's a free version, or there's a very limited version. SurveyMonkey is good because then nobody knows who's responding and what they're saying and what the issues are, and then you can get the results and you can give those to your mental health provider, or if you are the mental health provider, you can look at those and you can print out a report and say, this is what people are saying. So the ProQual is something that you're going to be, using on your own as an employee. You will use this on your own. And you can just print this out and take it and then hang on to it. SurveyMonkey is something you can do online. The satisfaction survey is something that you can create, and we've got one that Anthony can talk about in just a moment, about what they find is working and what's not working. And then personal stories I hear, or Anthony hears, or somebody you might hear from someone else's commander that I talked to someone and it was really useful, or you might hear from somebody that they tried to talk to me and they couldn't reach me. But those personal stories that people are willing to share, that can tell a great deal about the success of your program. So that's 4 ways that you can try to get the information that can be very helpful to you when you're building your program and keeping your program going.
Yeah, and I agree. I love the ProQual. I sent that form out. In fact, I think it's a great tool. And I know you got it at the beginning of the presentation, the download. It's one of our PDF downloads. Great tool. Get to really assess yourself and where you're at, and areas that you may need some direction, and you may need to talk to someone. And I find myself doing this, I would say maybe every 3 months, just kind of reevaluating the way things are. And then, of course, the satisfaction survey, again, another great tool to really understand, how we are in our current position. Is this the right place for you? I gave you some examples at the beginning about having 3 of my people move on, and doing that satisfaction survey with them, and and helping understand, areas that I need to grow as a leader, and then areas where they need to grow. And one of my agents, she actually went to work, and she's okay with me sharing this, with the Special Olympics to do investigations there, because I was going to give her, she just wanted to try something different where she could do more one-on-one investigations. She was more of my Icac HT person. And so she learned a little bit about herself doing some of these self-assessments, okay? So these are great tools. So think about that. And again, looking at this slide, the different areas they fall into, think about all these areas and how things are affecting you, and then assessing yourself and how you can improve and do things a little bit different, and sometimes better, right? So the team assessment, of course, the morale of your staff is very important. As a leader, as a manager, I do look for that. Probably the most difficult time in my 33-year career was this last year. I know it was difficult for me both as a leader in law enforcement and things that I do now. And then, of course, at home with our families, so it's trying to balance all of that, but looking at your staff and the morale and how it's affecting them. So it's something, quick check-ins for me are important, okay? What I would do, and I would call my folks individually just to see how they're doing. And for example, one of my assistants, I would call and say, "How are you doing today?" And she goes, "Well, she starts telling me about her work." And I said, "Okay, great, but I want to, how are you doing it today? How was your weekend? What did you do?" And then she went on to tell me about what her and her family did and everything, or how I even had one tell me, "The sky's really beautiful today. It's a great day." That's okay. I want to hear them. I want to see how they feel. It was difficult during the pandemic, doing lots of check-ins. When we're back to normal working environment where I can actually go in there, just doing those check-ins. We have an Icac suite. I would just go in there to check on them, see how they're doing, and that's important. Of course, the staff retention, I touched on that already. It's going to happen. We're going to lose folks, especially in today's the current environment that we're in and everything, the way things are going. Folks are going to decide to move on and do something different. But it's important we understand why they're moving on, and if there's anything different that we can do for the next person. And then, of course, the team connection and the support, taking care of each other. Something I know Carol and I talked about this. It's something that she learned and she shared with me, is that when she was down south meeting with one of the Homeland Security, and she had them together in one big room, they really never talked about how they were feeling about the CSAM and what they were dealing with on a daily basis. But once you got them to talk, they realized many of them were experiencing the same thing. So she building that team connection and having that support. And that was an important process because she was able to leave there, leave some tools behind, leave there, and then actually they can start relying on each other more. So having that kind of team connection is important. Of course, individual assessments, change in sick days, we look for that. I mean, if you have an individual calling in sick more often, what's going on? Is the stress affecting them? I mean, is the job too stressful? Is something going on at the job? Is there something that's within your control as a manager? What you can do? And it's something that I look at. I mean, if I see someone is calling in sick frequently, I look at them. I really want to get to know your people anyway, right? You really want to know who they are. I'm not going to ask them a lot of personal questions and let them share with me what they want to share, but looking for that. So looking for that. But as an individual, if you're feeling like you need to take more time off and things like that, a decrease in symptoms of stress, and then dealing with vicarious trauma. So you see that you're feeling better about things. You're getting more support. Again, going back to having a good team around you And then individually, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And again, looking at that assessment tool that we shared with you as well. What are you doing different in your life, right? On your individual assessments, are you eating better? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you going to the gym? Are you going for a walk with a dog? Are you spending more family time? Did you take up a hobby, not just that's related to law enforcement? I know it sounds funny, but Carol and I do this, and to me, this is a hobby. I really, really, really love working with people and helping them understand how what stress can do to your life. So what are you doing different? And then our participation in services. What kind of services are you part of? Are you seeing, I mean, we've talked about this in these series. What kind of services are you seeking out? Are you talking to someone outside, even if you don't have an MHP on your team and you're talking to someone, and that's great. Or your clergy or your priest or someone in the church, or a trusted friend or someone that's there to support you. Or I mean, you're participating in services that that involve other things other than what you do, right? That bring out some joy in your life, and what are you doing to help us with you moving on each day?
And then how is the team doing looking at the 4 points of resilience? So the 4 points of resilience cover these 4 different areas. And if you're looking at your team, trying to evaluate from your perspective how things are going, from a physical body standpoint, are people continuing to do exercise like they had committed to? Do you notice people are either losing a lot of weight or maybe gaining some weight? That might be an indicator. From a mental mind standpoint, are people being effective in their work, efficient in their work? Do they seem focused? Do they seem distracted? Do they seem like they're kind of in a fog? If they are, that's probably an indicator that maybe you need to do something else to give them more support. Emotional heart. Do you have people that are getting very angry maybe, or very tearful? What kind of emotion do you see going on in the office? And then how are they getting along with their coworkers or with you? How are they talking about their connections with their family members? All of these are so important. And the most important thing to do is kind of look at how were things last month compared to this month? How were things 6 months ago compared to this month? So that's going to be the change in those things that's going to make the difference. Like Anthony was saying earlier, he's got an employee who's kind of a crotchety old man. He's not literally old, but he's kind of just a grumpy man. And so if we were going to gauge him as using his grumpiness, well, he's always been grumpy. So grumpy is not anything new. Grumpy is just who he is. So taking into consideration how people were in the past and how they are now can help you. And this is very, very important if you're working on a new case that's very big, or you're working on something that was very intense. Really hone in on any changes that you might notice, and then either ask your mental health provider to meet with them to talk about what's going on, or just say, hey, you know, I noticed that it seems like you're a little bit more agitated. Is everything going okay? So checking in with the individuals to see how they're doing is going to be key in making sure that your team is going well.
Exactly. And I kind of touched on this earlier, that the physical part's important, increase in exercise. So again, are people increasing their exercise routine? Something that we that I've done within our team is they fill out a form and ask for additional time to work out on duty, and I approve it, of course, right away, and I just send it up to HR, and so that gives them the extra opportunity, extra time, and they can do it, of course, during lunch or towards the end of the day or whatever works good for them. But are they reporting to? Are they increasing their exercise time? Are they taking an interest in healthy eating? Okay, eating the right things. I know it's something, again, being back in the office. We got to the point in our office is that we're attached to the Hyatt, and they have of course, they have their own gym, and they allow our office to use it. It became a competition. People were working out over there during lunch. They were comparing what they were going to be eating during lunch. It had to be salads or things that were healthy. I remember one day someone brought in donuts, and they were like, oh, nobody eats donuts anymore. What is there? no heavy carbs, you know, so next time somebody brought a fruit plate and still some carbs there, but not the sugary ones as much, right? And so that was neat to see, though, because we saw that turn. But then, you know, of course, they have those junk food days, too, and they had fun doing that. But it wasn't just the Icac and human trafficking unit. It was all of special investigations and got involved, which is really cool that it transferred over to all the agents in the area. And do you notice any change in their physical well-being? Because, again, I noticed with everyone working out and you felt that energy in the office and people eating right and doing things and not almost holding each other accountable, but not actually saying it out loud and make people feel bad because they're missing it, but knowing that they all want to be part of that and you feel that energy, it just made things different. And I think that was probably the biggest thing we saw when everyone was forced to stay home is they couldn't get that energy anymore they had in the office from who's working out and what are you eating today, you know? So that part went away, and I know that's kind of the complaint I got from my teammates. They go, I want to go back to the office. You want to go back to work? Well, it's so much fun there because we all kind of have this competition. So that's all part of that. Again, it definitely causes a better focus on with our job. The teams appear to be more focused when it's that light atmosphere where people are working out, they're healthy, flexible schedule. I noticed an improved efficiency in their jobs, you know, just getting things done, putting in the extra time. I didn't have to micromanage. It was actually great because I said, you know, you take care of yourselves, eat right, work out, take plenty of breaks, no CSAM the last 2 hours of the day, and the rest of the time, be efficient in your job, and they got it done, okay? And so they got that more work satisfaction. I honestly started thinking about that I lost 3 people towards the end of the pandemic because they really loved being in the office and everything that was going on there, and they didn't have that outlet. I wonder if they would have been so quick to actually change to a shorter retirement. Maybe they would have done that still. But I know from the exit interviews that they all said the same thing, that the work environment was great when we were in the office, and the support they got from everyone was great, and that's very important. Of course, the emotional part of it, positive self-expressions, you know, are they positive on how people are expressing themselves with each other, you know, how they communicate with each other. You have happier Icac team members, you know, because as we all know, Icac is a difficult place to work, but if you can, I saw that we're happier, definitely getting along better. It appeared that they're less angry, less people are getting short-tempered. Again, that's something that it's interesting that, you know, that I'll be able to write a paper someday about this, that I saw that during the pandemic, the people were getting a little more short fuse and shorter tempers during working from home than I saw ever in the office when they were able to see face to face and be together and work out together and eat breakfast together sometimes and do all those things together. And then of course, better communication, just be able to talk to each other and see each other one-on-one. And that's probably the biggest complaint Carol and I both heard, is that people miss people, they miss each other because they know they could depend on each other. Right, Carol? Yeah. All right. Again, the relationship and connections, better Icac teamwork, and that's something, again, that we noticed, that when people have that kind of work environment and the environment, it feels that it's just like everyone's really supporting each other. It does help things. It improves the working relationship. And then it also transferred to home. I mean, I heard some great things that when they went home, you know, they left work at work, but many of them would even get together as families, you know, and then we even got some of that feedback. And Carol and I actually were able to do some family sessions prior to the pandemic and stuff. And those were favorable, that even just talking to some of the people that showed up to support their family members and learn what they do, they said that, you know, some of the things that, considering everything they're significant had to go through, be exposed to dealing with CSAM, they still came home with a positive attitude and they were doing well. So That's definitely an important part of it. Oops.
And resilience is such a key indicator of how well people are doing. So are they able, after a very difficult case, to kind of put that aside and move forward? Or is it seem like weeks after that case is over, are they still, everyone's kind of dragged down, they're not bouncing back, they're struggling with mood, or they're struggling with their emotions? How is the team cohesiveness going? Are they feeling connected? Are they working well together? Is there some bickering between people? Are they not supporting each other on the cases? That their cohesiveness is going to be an indicator of their resilience, which is going to be an indicator of the success of the program. And then, is there an increase in the physical and emotional wellness? So like Anthony was talking about, are people getting together to go exercise? Are emotional wellness side of things, are they talking about issues with the provider, or are they talking about emotional issues with themselves or with their commander? Are they working through those things, which is so important when you're talking about resilience, making sure that you've got someone that you can connect with and talk to. And then positive thinking. Do they seem like they're negative? Do they seem like they're optimistic? Does it seem like they're saying, we got this, we can do, even though the cases are really difficult, and even though the people are kind of awful and we would like to see them spend the rest of their life in jail, we can still do this? Or is it, the kind of negative attitude, we'll never get through this, every day we see more and more, we can't catch up? So what's the attitude like? What's their thinking like? And then does the Icac team, does it feel like they have a purpose and a focus? Do they find meaning in their work? So if they can come together and say, I know we're doing this for the kids, and we're doing, even though we don't get to every bad guy, what we're doing is great, and I really want to continue doing this work. That's all a piece of resilience.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk on a little bit about is something that we learned during putting together the program is your wellness provider really needs to understand what CSAM is, and that's something that Carol understood from the beginning, the understanding what they're dealing with and the images, because as we mentioned in the past is that we've had therapists or a person who's supposed to be a wellness provider actually tell an Icac member, or how can you look at that stuff? Actually what came to mind is about 3 weeks ago, I was working with the university up north on Icac and what we do in CSAM, and I actually had a PhD in therapy at this university tell me that exact same statement. She said, wow, I'm so glad to have you. How can you deal with all of that? And I had to bite my tongue, because I wanted to say, well, we care enough, and somebody has to do it, and we want to do this to make a difference. But, I try to understanding that people are just not educated on what is that. So there's something I say, when you have the right wellness provider, it's important that you understand what CSAM is. More education about working with law enforcement and Icac is important, of course. When you're finding the right person, to work with your teams, they can't just be a law enforcement person or one of the guys or one shooting or work a critical incident team. This is completely different. Just like when I worked narcotics undercover years ago, I can't work undercover in Icac. I can now because I've been trained, but it was completely different. We think, oh, I've done that before. It's not, it's the same thing. When you find the right wellness person for your team, it isn't just because they do wellness somewhere else or they're a therapist somewhere else that they'll do great working with your team. And then more education around vicarious trauma, of course. It's knowing a lot about it. I mean, that's something Carol taught me from the beginning. I learned a lot through, of course, the Innocent Justice Foundation, working with other commanders, but helping our teammates and folks understand what is vicarious trauma and how that affects us. And then as a provider, a good fit for the team. We talked a little bit about that, or actually a lot over the entire series, is finding the right person for the team. But again, as I mentioned today, some of the mistakes that I made, interviewing that person, getting to know that person, making sure they're the right person. You're not going to hurt their feelings. I mean, it's better have the right wellness provider for your team than have the wrong person there, but you just didn't want to hurt their feelings and tell them they weren't the right person. because you're going to hurt your team more in the long run. So having the right person is very important.
And then, you know, when you're looking at the assessment and the results, you want to look at, do we need to change, are there changes in service delivery? So I talked about this previously. Would it be better for your team to have more or less number of interactions? If I went to Anthony's team once a week, that would probably be too much. But I would get that feedback when we did a survey, when we did the assessment, when we looked at how the response was from people, and if they needed a change, whether increase or decrease, I could get that, and then I could adapt right away. And then how my support is given. So again, do I need to do more or less individual sessions or group sessions or psychoeducation? We try to balance all of these out because if we know that not everyone's going to want an individual session, but maybe they'd be happier in a group session, or maybe they would like some education. So we try to figure out how we can do a balance of these things and hopefully hit everybody where they need. But again, our assessment's going to tell us, do we need more or less of any of these things? And then, you know, do we need to look at adding peer support? Or maybe there is peer support in place, but our team doesn't like that. Or do we need to add in clergy or chaplain, or is that, again, not being used? So what are the ways that we can increase the quality of the care that we're giving to our Icac or task force or our human trafficking task force or whatever company it is, agency you're working with? And then is there a different way to connect? I have used all of these ways to connect with our folks as well as individual, but you're going to find some people who like informal lunches. And so maybe you'll get a handful of people show up then, but other people would really prefer individual. So you need to be able to be adaptable and understanding of what the team needs in order to meet them. If you only did individual sessions, you might miss out on somebody who would come to an informal lunch where you can just kind of hang out and talk and get support as a group. Zoom meetings have been what I've done for the last year now, and those have worked out well. They're working out well as a way to connect and support the team. And then if people want to talk to me individually about their own specific issues, we'll talk by telephone. But again, it's being able to be very adaptable when you get the assessment results. And then these are things to consider as well. Do we want to make this program mandatory, or is it going to be voluntary participation? How is that going to be decided? Our program is strongly encouraged, but it's not mandatory because some agencies have unions, and so we can't make it mandatory. But ours is voluntary with strong emphasis on encouraging people to do that. And then what are other activities that we can do to supplement what your mental health provider is doing? Can as a team, can you do some team building activities? So maybe the admin team can put together an activity that everyone can do and enjoy. I know Anthony used to take their team out to do paintball and some other things just to build the team, which is not necessarily strictly a wellness from a mental health provider standpoint, but it certainly is helpful things. Wellness days, so encouraging people to take the day off if they feel really stressed and making sure that there's no stigma behind that. All they need to do is say, hey, Anthony, I need a day off because I just need a wellness day. I'm going to go to the spa. I'm going to go play basketball with my friends. I'm going to lounge around the pool, but I need that wellness. And then, you know, do a team health challenge, which kind of Anthony was talking about. Do we want to do something where we can see, can we meet X amount of steps per day as a team? Or can we have 5 out of 6 or 4 out of 5 lunches each week be a healthy lunch? Or can we do a team challenge around water, or a team challenge around gratitude or volunteerism? All of these things can help build the team, and they can also help to increase wellness amongst the team.
You know, it's I want to touch on that really quick. Is that something, as Carol mentioned, we tried during the holidays, and we've talked about this, celebrating significant events with your team. Again, new baby coming, things like that. And then during the holidays, we would all go to a Dave & Buster's. Here we have Main Event and Dave & Buster's. And that's where the laser tag and the paintball and all those kind of things fall into place. Whatever you have in your community, those things are important to continue building that team so they can rely on each other. So just think about what you can do to make that happen. All right. And there we are.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. That was absolutely amazing. As usual, so much information, so much useful information. Just as a reminder to everyone, we had PDFs available for you all. So if you're curious about the assessment tools that you were speaking about, you can download those or email us, and I'll get those to you. We do have 2 audience questions, and one of them is about benchmarking, which I kind of already asked Anthony about. Anthony said he's not involved in any benchmarking, correct, Anthony?
Right. That's correct, yes.
Right. Okay, and then we have another one, and the question is, what do you do with team members who are obviously suffering from work-related mental health? Are they required to undergo neuropsychiatric exams to determine their fitness to perform field duty?
I think that's probably an
Anthony would like to take that, or?
Yeah. No, we've never had to do that. We have not run across that problem. Well, not really a problem. That kind of that has not come up with my teams in the last 13 years, where it became a mental health problem, and they had it. No, we've never had that come up. I imagine. I don't even know how to answer that. It just, I think if that issue, if something like that came up, I imagine it being in law enforcement, we would find a new place for them and then try to help them through wellness tools. And I know we have a department therapist or a state therapist that can assist them, but we have never we've never been in that position.
And certainly if that came up with our Icac, Anthony could say, so-and-so seems like they're struggling. Can you set up an appointment with them? And so I could meet with them. And oftentimes just having a therapist talk to you can help you to say, wow, maybe I do need to get some help, and then encourage them to seek out that help on their own, so that it wouldn't be seen as a punitive process for that individual. It would be seen as a supportive process. So I could meet with them. I could say, it seems like your work has kind of gone down, and it seems like you're a little bit tearful, or whatever examples it is that I was told, and tell me what I need to do to help you. How can I help you, support you? We want to make sure we get this taken care of now before it causes long-term consequences for you in your work and the rest of your life. So let's work together as a team and see what we can do to get you the support you need.
What a great note to end this on, right? Let's support all of us as a team together. I hope everyone got plenty of information throughout the whole series of how we can do that. Even if your agency does not have the budget, cannot support a full program, what are the little things that you can implement? And hopefully with the times, the way that they are changing, people are acknowledging that mental health and wellness is important, and how crucial it is to support your people in order for them to do their jobs. The budgets will become available. So fingers crossed. Thank you everyone for joining us again today. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you soon. William, I'll let you take it away.
All right, great. And thank you again, yes, to our presenters and to everyone. We appreciate you all. Hopping on for today's web event, just a few last-minute announcements before we conclude today's webinar. Just as a reminder to folks, please note, as I said in the beginning, that within 24 hours, you will receive your automated email with the certificate of attendance for today's web event. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. Please note that we do have the contact information for us here, just in case you want to get in contact with us and you have more questions about OJJDP's NTTAC. You can also sign up for our listserv, where you can receive more information from about our web events and upcoming trainings. And also make sure you go to Facebook and check us out to learn more about upcoming trainings and additional resources. If you would like to get in contact with OJJDP's TTA Help Desk, the phone number and email address is located here. Please note you can also learn more about OJJDP through their website here. Be sure to also sign up for their listserv to receive the latest news from OJJDP, and check out their events page to learn about upcoming events. Do you have a training and technical assistance need? Well, if so, please submit your request via OJJDP's TTA 360 platform. You can access the platform through the URL on this website. And please note that you can access past web events that are archived on OJJDP's multimedia page as well. Take a moment to view those webinars, and you can contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk if you would like to get supporting materials related to any of those, some of those web events. And finally, please note that we do have some upcoming events. On the 17th and 18th, we do have 2 solicitation webinars around CEV, child exposed violence, and also around comprehensive youth violence prevention. Please note that these are solicitation webinars, so they are specifically for individuals who are looking to go after these OJJDP grants that are released. And next week, we have a webinar around the expungement of juvenile records, misconceptions, collateral consequences, and emerging practices. That will be held next Saturday or next weekend from 2:30 to 3:45. So please note that we have that event coming up as well. Please be sure to connect with OJJDP at any of these locations or these handles here: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, News at a Glance, and also, as I mentioned earlier, JuveJust. And finally, before you all leave, we have one more poll question that I would like to put up for everyone. And we basically want to know, how do you plan to apply the knowledge that you've learned here for this web event? So that poll question is going to pop up shortly, and you should see that poll question in the corner there. I'm also going to go ahead and put back up those files that I shared at the very beginning of the web event, just in case people did not get access to those files. And so please note that on your screen shortly, you will see those files that I shared earlier to pop up on your screen. So you should see those come here. And so if you want to access those, just click download, and you'll be able to click the name of the file and click download, and you'll be able to access those items. So I'll leave that up for a little bit while you all are completing that poll and downloading those items there. Again, thank you all for attending today's web event. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Take care, William.